One, they had a bit of a chance. They said that Christianity and Orthodox Russian Christianity was now compatible with Marxist-Leninism, which is the key to a weakening of the resolve for struggle, because the desire to crush out religious belief, even to the degree of atrocity, such as those committed by Pol Pot in Kampuchea, for example, where there was an actual attempt to kill every self-defining Buddhist in the society, is an attempt to eradicate completely that which exists before. Mao, who was even more psychologically radical than Marx himself, believed, completely contrary to all biological ideas, that man is a piece of paper. Man is a white sheet. You can take a man and torture him to a gibbering wreck. You can take a man and say he's a god and then shoot him afterwards. Man is changeable and plastic and can be moulded by struggle, or what they call dialectic, ideology in life and in language and in history. Give me a man for half an hour and I'll make him a communist. It's this sort of idea, and occasionally many of their theories, when applied, such as to American prisoners of war in the Korean War, for example, had a certain salience. Maoist behavioural theories worked on these lines. They believed that there's a 5% leadership caucus in all groups. So you take the officers away from the men when you've got them captured. Then you take away the non-commissioned officers. Then you take away the moral officers, those amongst the men who are the elite, amongst the mass of the troops, who have personalities which would be known as leadership personalities. In crisis, people would look to them. If the officer has fallen, they become the officer. You get rid of, you remove them. You either shoot them or put them in a separate camp or send them back to the Americans. You want the mass that you can mould and destroy and remake. And they did it with quite a lot of them. Many of them came back to the US 3 or 4 years later, mouthing sort of Marxist platitudes, we invaded the third world, man, we deserve what we got. And this sort of thing. In the Vietnam War, some of these tendencies to deterioration and degeneracy in the American army became so large that many of them would shoot their own officers rather than go out on patrol, which is one of the many reasons why they ended in a surreal mess prior to surrender. America, of course, conducted a mass bombing campaign, said they'd won, and then cleared out, which a scenario they may repeat in Iraq and Afghanistan in the next couple of years. But to return to our theory, to our Marxist theory, Marx emerged really first in a group of radical German intellectuals called the Free Ones, the Freien, who used to meet in a beer cellar in the 1840s. In the 1840s, of course, liberalism and nationalism went together as ideologies. Now, 150 years on, their daggers drawn. But in that group in the 1840s, there were gathered some of the most radical, let's change the world intellectuals in Germany, in Central Europe. Many of them have been forgotten today. Botho and Otto Strauss have been forgotten. Feuerbach's only remembered because Marx wrote an essay about him. Max Stirner is remembered for one book he wrote about extreme individualism. But in the corner of the paintings of the Free Ones, as they gathered in this cellar, there's a tall Gentile, Engels, the factory owner, the financier of the theorist, and Marx. Then with an enormous black beard, because he was very young then. Marx's idea is you had to smash all the theory, particularly all the progressive theory, that predated him. That's why he began with the German ideology. He began with groundwork, Grundrisse, and the German ideology. You must clear away all these false and fake progressive ideas based on liberal thinking, bourgeois semantics, and utopianism. Everything must be based upon science and upon matter, and must be provable, and must be empirical. He believed that intellectuals could so interpret the changes in society that they could master the consciousness of a society, change it, and shift it, and force it in directions that even hadn't entirely been predicated on the theory. The one thing you notice about Marxism is it's a seething vortex of ideas. It's always restless. It's always counter-propositional. Marx will make a statement, then he'll qualify it, then he'll withdraw it, then he'll make another statement which is more radical. And this is part of, again, what they call dialectic. Now, the idea of dialectic is based on Hegelian theory, and it's based upon an ancient Greek thinker called Heraclitus, who believed that everything is in flux, and everything changes, and everything works on itself. The fury with which Marxists fall on each other in intellectual dispute, often about arcane matters which are of no relevance, which in a regime context is a choice between life and death. You advocate the dialecticism of a particular crop cycle, and you get it wrong, and the party sides with another, you're shot, and your family's shot, and those that are related to them are shot as well, because ideas are important. The man who thumbs through the Guardian on the tube and thinks ideas, he cares. To a Marxist, ideas are life, and you write them in blood because they're important. They suppress artistic forms because they believe they're important enough to merit that. And that's the difference between why they almost conquered a world and didn't in various ways. Now, Marxists on the whole form two camps in my mind, politically and ideologically. In all Marxist groups you get rather weak, pacifistic, loving, humanistic people. The vicar's daughter, who believes human nature isn't right. If only we could be nicer to each other. If only we could spread more love. You get these people always in ultra-left and communist groups, and next to them on the podium, next to them in the auditorium, you are utterly nihilistic, ruthless, virtually criminal types who want to use the structure of power when they get it to crush those underneath them, don't give a damn about ideology, and are actually amongst the most misanthropic people you could ever meet. And you have these extremes of the innocent lovey and the sort of sadistic amoralist in the same group. That's why when a communist regime comes in, they have enormous purges, because they have to start purging their own to get rid of all the idiots, to get rid of all of those who believed it was love, 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 and they're led off by the men in leather jackets. Because you've got to get rid of those fools early. If a right-wing regime is formed and there's a purge, it's because it's people struggling for power. That's what it's about. Now, Marx in the British Library began writing sort of pure theory as a critique. The interesting thing about Marxism is, in a strange way, its unoriginality. Epistemologically, it's Hegel, and that's the theory about how it thinks about its own theory, and Heraclitus. Politically, it's the ultra-left of its own time, fitted in and made to do service. All of the classical liberal thinkers from Adam Smith onwards who underpin capitalism as an idea, Marx doesn't think up an original theory in relation to them. He critiques them. All Marxism is a shadow. It's a critique. It's a sort of feeding on the carcass of something which exists before you. You critique it, you turn it around, you re-engineer it, and you come to vow on the basis of a negation. So the negation of that which exists before is a key to the nature of this type of thinking. And then you negate the negation. And then you negate the negation of the negation. And you go on and on. The most radical version of state communism is Trotskyism. The idea that you have a regime that renews itself through endless and perpetual struggle. There is no rest. There is no motion. Trotsky wrote endless sentences like this. No love, no serenity, no stillness, no motion, only the struggle. And of course, Stalin took him at his word, which is why he purged them all from the party up to 1928. But until then, of course, they were giving almost as good as they got. And both sides in that dispute worshipped the parent, Lenin. Now, Lenin was taught his Marxism by Plekhanov, who was a Menshevik, who didn't like the Bolshevik Revolution. Quite a few Marxists who were purely sort of almost gentle professors of cultural destruction, they didn't actually like the Bolshevik Revolution because in actual fact it's contrary to some Marxist theory. The idea of the Plekhanov school is that if in a totally undeveloped society you have a militarist coup by a left-wing armed group, which is what the Bolshevik Revolution really was, you will end up in an extremely nasty, what we would call today, third world dictatorship, which is exactly what happened. Because in their theory you have to allow capitalism and the bourgeois class, which is loathed and yet admired, strangely, simultaneously, to reach fruition, to create the proletariat industrially, that then leaders from the bourgeoisie split off, form the communist vanguard, link with the proletariat, revolutionise the world and create defective communism, create socialism, the first step. So it's a progressive cycle. The Leninist way of dealing with dissidents is to just shoot them.